Hey, Zapak, and so today I have the pleasure of interviewing Travis Boatman, who is the CEO of Carbonated Games, a LA-based mobile game studio. Travis is a 25-year veteran of the video game industry, 19 years in mobile. He has also served as the Senior VP of Mobiles at both Zynga and Electronic Arts, where he led global studios. He led the global studios mobile game strategy. So, Travis, first of all, thank you. Welcome to the channel. Sorry about the 2 weeks where I screwed up and messed up the interview, but I'm glad that you're finally here.
No worries. And I was telling you earlier that I was feeling a little under the weather. So for you guys watching, if I'm coughing from time to time, I'm not a chain smoker. It's just fighting some sort of bug. But we're gonna power through, and hopefully everyone gets has a good time and gets to have some fun hearing all this stuff.
Absolutely. So we're gonna start off. Gonna keep it short and sweet because I wanted to do this because my goal is to motivate other people who are interested. And a lot of people tell me they want to work in video games or in the video game industry. They want to become video game developers. You're one of those people who knows this entire thing from end to end. You've seen it all. You've been in the game a long time. And so today, I hope that this interview will help you to get the information that you need to motivate you all to find futures. I mean, hopefully have awesome futures in the video game industry, whether you be a developer or whether you create your own game or run your own game company. So first question is, so please tell me a little bit more about your background and what motivated you to start Carbonated Games in the first place.
Yeah, totally. And I'll say that I sort of started early in the games industry. I don't have any kind of formal games education. That does exist now, but even today, you still don't really even need that. So it's a great way to get into the business. You can get formal education, or you don't have to. Either way is great. I'm sort of the non-formal route. I mean, I went to college, but not for video games. I was a sort of a pre-med student-ish. And
Okay, we'll
then
talk about that.
yeah, and got into games. I'm older than I look, or at least I hope I'm older than I look. But I got started in the games industry in the early '90s, around kind of 90, actually 1990, as a tester. And so I started in test and QA. A friend of mine got me into the business, and I just started in QA. My sort of why I love the business and what keeps me motivated, it's kind of two things. I like entertaining people. I think there's a big part of the games industry that is about entertaining audiences. So think similar, a musician or a comedian or I don't know, an artist or a painter or whatever. What you make goes out to the audience. Your audience likes it. And so if you have that kind of entertainment component to you, that's a big part of this business. Not anything. There's a couple other parts of the business that we can talk about, but that is one of the things that I liked about it. Second thing is I've always been sort of a fan of solving problems. My mind's wired that way. So I like solving problems. And one of the, for better or worse, one of the things about the video game industry is it never stops changing. And there's always a new problem, always new technology, always a new thing to figure out. And so it has kept me engaged, my whole life. And never a dull moment, always something new to do, something to figure out. And so between those two things, that's really been the primary driver for me. Much less sort of the, making money or necessarily even being an engineer. We have a lot of really talented engineers, but for me, it was the entertainment side of it and just figuring things out, the problem solving part of it.
Gotcha. Now, was Carbonated actually your first company?
Yeah, it was. So I'm new at the entrepreneurial thing. My sort of path through the industry was mostly about, again, trying to entertain audiences. And so I was always trying to figure out how do you do that? And I started a long time ago. So the only way that you could really I sort of thought starting at a studio would be the best place to kind of entertain audiences, get your product in front of them. And there's some truth to that, at least way a long time ago. But I quickly found that the publishers had access to the audience, right? They had distribution. No matter what you did, even if you're a studio, you had to go through a publisher. And the publisher was really the one who interfaced with the audience. They're the ones who got you talk to the players. They did the marketing. They got the customer service calls back. They really interfaced with the customers. The studios were pretty far away, and so I gravitated towards the publishers because it was the best way to and essentially entertain audiences. But a couple of years ago, probably in the late 2006, 2007, 2008, a bunch of things started to change in the industry. And what happened was all of the stuff that the publishers had, this kind of control over the audience, distribution, user acquisition, customer service, all of that stuff, it all kind of got commoditized. It became sort of free for anybody to use. So an example of that would be you can make any game, you can put it in the app store, and your game can go out to thousands to millions to hundreds of millions to billions of people. I mean, just doing this interview with you could put this content out and have an audience just find it. You don't have to go and do a deal with Target or Walmart, right? You can just put this out there and you go direct to your audience, which is also the reason why I love doing stuff like this. As much as I hope people learn something, I'm actually learning. I'm trying to figure out, what do people like about this? How does this direct relationship between you and your audience go?
Yes.
And video games changed into that pretty quickly in the kind of early 2000s, mid 2000s, sort of 2006, 2010, 11. And I could sort of see the writing on the wall, and I said, wow, as much as it's awesome, being able these big publishers with great resources, again, I just always gravitated to being closer to the audience, to the players. And so I met some like-minded folks. My co-founders were amazing. And we just said, well, let's make a company that really is about talking to the players and building product that can interface with our players. And so that was sort of the thesis behind Carbonated, is building a live ops company that can make cool content and see if players like it and listen to what the player feedback is and go from there, which is kind of how we met, actually, sort of through that process. We're still really early at it, but you were sort of astute. You wanted to talk to us and get involved, and we wanted to talk to you, and so that's how we sort of got to know each other.
Well, so you mentioned the publishers. Like, I've seen some very bad things from publishers. I know publishers are a great opportunity for developers who can't really get off the ground by themselves to be able to get a title out there, get support, get all the things they need, social media managers, all kind of stuff that comes with publishers that I think are really amazing. But I've also seen publishers squeeze a title because the stakeholders wanted money and kill some really amazing games in the future, in my past. And I'm sure that continues, and that's part of the industry. From your perspective, is that one of the things that motivated you? You want to be able to have full end-to-end control over a product, or has that kind of thing happened to you in the past and maybe rubbed you the wrong way, which maybe led to you forming Carbonated?
Yeah, it's not so. So the way I think about the industry, and I'll answer the question, but there's sort of like three parts to the games industry. I think personally, there's like a business component. Like, these businesses have to make money, otherwise you can't employ anybody. Everyone loses their job. So there is a kind of the business component to it. There's a engineering software component to it. These are obviously all interactive products. They're software, so you need an engineering component to them. And then you need the kind of the appeal component, the cool, fashionable stuff, like the screenshot behind me from our game. You want to have cool, interesting stuff and cool graphics and surprise and delight and all that stuff. And those three pieces need to kind of play in concert with each other. They sort of has to have a synergy between business, tech, and kind of the entertainment side of it. And like you might imagine, those things get unbalanced from time to time in various companies. And I think one of the challenges of the business side of things is it tends to get stronger over time. And there's a bunch of sort of career path and rewarding structure reasons why that tends to be true. But the business side folks of the industry tend to move into places of power faster than the kind of more creative types or the more engineering types. And so they tend to do what they're best at, which is they tend to try to drive revenue. They tend to want to make a more profitable business because that's what the investors want them to do. And there's a balance there because, obviously, if a company makes a good amount of money, they can invest that and make a more amazing product every year. And, some of the companies that often get criticism also make some pretty amazing game, which would be impossible to make without that revenue. So I think there's kind of a tension there. I think what's changing now, though, which I love, and I think it's great, it's essentially players have the strongest voice now. Again, that's why we started Carbonated, is that if you can figure out what players really want and you supply it to them, they'll stay and they're happy to pay for it. If you give them the right thing, they're happy to stay and play and hang around with your game essentially forever. And you're right, if you try to get too much money out of them, they're going to leave and your product's going to die and your company will die.
Absolutely.
So there's kind of a balance there. But I think this relationship between studios and customers is something relatively new. It hasn't really existed for a while. It's only been around 10, 15 years in the truest sense of like, you can put a product out from a team of 20 or 30 people in, say, California, and you've got players playing it in Russia and India and Germany and Japan and Korea, and you have a direct relationship with those players way over there. Mm-hmm. That's a new world that nobody's really been in before. And so there's this kind of, how do we figure out how to give everybody what they want? And as you might imagine, you have a really strong diversity of opinions, right? The Korean players might want something really different from the Russian players. So, sometimes if you solve for one, you make the other ones upset. There's sort of this interesting tug of war that goes on. And a lot of these companies are just trying to find their way. Ultimately, nobody has a sort of villainous background. They're not trying to hurt anybody. They're just trying to make successful products that make money and can pay all their employees and do well. But a lot of those good intentions go awry, and so a lot of the stories you hear are true. Generally, they kind of meant well. Honestly, I've been inside a lot of these big companies. There's never anything nefarious going on. It's just sometimes they think, oh, they mix and match the wrong ideas, and that can be really dangerous. Adding freemium to a paid product is a great example of mix and matching two really good ideas that don't belong together, right? Yes. Or at least it can, but you have to be really careful how you do it. But you could see them saying, wow, we have this one product over here that does in-app purchase and free, and it's doing great. We have this other product over here that's a paid game. What if we just married them? Yeah. I'm overstating for simplicity purposes.
Definitely from the business guys, right?
yeah, you're right. Generally more from the business guys. And, you may have player advocates, or you may have, the creative types who are saying, no, that's a bad idea, but they get overruled sometimes, not always, but sometimes. And in that way, those things go wrong. And then these companies learn really quickly. So then the business folks, they're not idiots. They learn really quickly. They make a mistake like that. They see that the products tank or the company take a serious reputation hit and damage the company. That stuff doesn't go unnoticed. And those people generally are held accountable. They have to kind of figure out how to operate better. The companies typically evolve and get better. And I could list you a whole bunch of companies that I think, in my opinion, have improved over the last 5 to 10 years because they made some hard mistakes, and they genuinely sort of looked internally and went, whoa, that was a bad mistake. We need to do better. And they have. So I think generally games is such a competitive player first industry. It really is that you can't survive if players don't like your products. You really can't. There are none out there. You might read some of the more extreme players. This game sucks. Nobody likes it. The truth is a lot of people love those products, or they wouldn't be successful.
Agreed. They would just die on the spot.
Yeah, and a lot of them do, by the way. A lot of products die.
True. Well, so you're in the mobile space. And you mentioned the background is from your game. Mm-hmm. So what can you tell us about the game, the title so far? Like, what can you share with us?
Yeah, so I know but we haven't publicly announced it yet. We'll probably sort of publicly unveil it and have probably a more of an open beta in the near future. I would say single-digit months. I don't want to be too specific because we're still working on it. And we're talking to players about what they like and what they don't like. We're trying to kind of make sure that it plays and resonates right with players. The game's called MadWorld. So it's a dystopian present game. You control kind of a squad of survivors who are trying to survive in this world. And one of the cool things about the goal of the game, or kind of the meta of the game, like why play this game, is you're battling for territory, unique territory. And so you might imagine that there are parts of the world that you might want to own because you live in those cities. So maybe, if you're in Los Angeles and you decide you want to fight for Los Angeles, but maybe another team wants to fight for San Diego. And those two teams may battle against each other for control of those territories. And so that on a much larger scale. Now, granted, we're a mobile game, so it is sort of constrained to what the devices can do from a capability standpoint, because we frankly don't make the hardware. So we've got to kind of stay with what the hardware can do. But it is ambitious for a team of our size, but we want to do something cool and wanted something that we want to play. So that's sort of the idea behind it. And it's heavily live ops oriented. So when we get it in front of players go, I like this, I don't like that. We can actually change the game very quickly based on feedback. So for anybody out there who wants to play it, we'll probably do some sort of announcement in the next coming months.
Okay.
And hopefully get lots of folks in there to give us feedback, because the more feedback we get, the better the games.
And they can go, if they want to learn about the game, they can go to the website, which is, I think it's just madworld.com. Is that correct?
I think just carbonated.com.
Carbonated.com. Okay.
Yeah, and then shortly after that, we'll do all the open Discord where people can go in there, and all the rest of the social stuff. The only reason we're not doing that right now is we're still a relatively small team, and we really want to make sure the core of the product is fun to play before we start to kind of scale and open it up.
Okay, all right. Now, for aspiring developers who might be watching this video, what are the high-level steps to create a successful title?
Oh man. Yeah. So there's I mentioned the three parts of it, like business, kind of entertainment and the tech side of things. I think figure out what you're passionate about, and where your skills lie. There are some people who love to problem solve, or maybe they're engineers, software engineers. If you're a software engineer and you want to start a studio or start building a product, you'll probably gravitate towards solving some interesting problem, or innovating through technology. You know, maybe you'll say, I've got a new way, I want to make a new feature that's never been seen in a game before, and you literally create it from nothing because you're an engineer and you can create awesome things. Or maybe there's a problem that the games industry has in some way. I don't know, like animation problem or a graphics problem or a number of players, concurrent player problem. You're like, oh, I can solve the concurrent player problem. So if I solve that problem, I can have a game with millions of people in a level, something like that. So if you sort of have the engineering acumen, you might sort of start your company with something that you're particularly good at because you're an engineer. So you might want to create some interesting problems to solve. If you're a business person, you might have great methodology for figuring out sort of a good, fair value exchange for content with players. Whether that's doing it globally, because if you supply product to players all over the world, there's a lot of trickiness in that. Maybe you're a great team builder. Maybe you're not the best engineer, but boy, you can hire great engineers. A lot of great business folks are really talented at building great teams, hiring really, really talented folks. And so maybe you're that kind of person. And in which case, you need to have a mission or a vision that inspires people to join the company. So if you're a business person, that's another way of doing it. And then if you're kind of a creative, whether that's a visual creative type or a designer type, and those are very different things. I think, if you're a visual type, you might want to make something that's sort of visually striking and different, that really sort of shocks people and is provocative. People go, wow, I got to play that game. I've never seen anything like that, whether it's 3D, 2D, whatever, it doesn't matter, but sort of a visual draw, something different. Or maybe you're a designer and you have a new game system or a new way of playing that's never been seen before, or a twist on something that people are familiar with it, but you have a new way of doing it that people go, oh my, that's amazing. And so you're innovating on gameplay. And of course, really good teams can do a couple of those things at once. But I would sort of say it sort of depends on who you are. It's a tough business, and you've got to be really passionate to do well in games, because it's hard, it's competitive. So I think generally people kind of gravitate towards what they're good at. At least I find that for the most part. That's why I started out with, what I'm good at, right? I'm sort of, kick that off because that's the way I was able to sustain myself in this industry over, what is it, almost 30 years. Which is a long way, right? Because if I was really good at one thing and didn't want to keep learning, I'd be making Philips CDI games, which nobody knows what those are. So, dating myself for sure.
All right. Well, tell me a little bit. How difficult was the fundraising process?
It's interesting. I think when we first founded the company, it was around 2015, and our thesis had a lot to do with this idea that kind of high-end, kind of hardcore games were going to come to mobile phones. And they had sort of popped up and come and gone at that point. You had sort of games like Infinity Blade, which appeared, they sort of went up into the top grossing charts and fell off really quickly, sort of ping-ponged out. You had some games that sustained a little bit longer, kind of the CSRs of the world, but they tend to sort of be more in the West, and they tend to be on high-end devices. They also didn't really sustain in the top grossings for that long. The top grossing charts were always dominated by the 2D freemium live ops games, the Candy Crushes and the Zynga Pokers and those games. They dominated the charts. But our sort of thesis was the world's changing. Devices are getting faster and faster and faster. Moore's law is not dead. And as these devices get faster and faster, they're going to be more capable of playing essentially last generation console games from a capability standpoint. And so also the audiences that are mobile players, they're the young people, right? They're the up and coming generation. They're not the crusty old folks that are sort of, give me my old Xbox or something like that. Most of the youth today plays mobile first. Particularly internationally. The United States and the West is a little more sort of, I have an Xbox and I have a mobile phone. But for a lot of the rest of the world, mobile's first. So the youth of the rest of the world plays on mobile first. And so we looked at that and we said, well, of course they're going to want to play these high-end kind of console-like experiences on their phones. That was the thesis of the company. When we went out to raise, we got a fair amount of resistance, to be honest, because people are like, nah, that's been tried and failed. And we're like, no, it's coming. And they're like, no, it's not. We kind of went round and round. And we didn't get the kind of valuations that we wanted. And so we ended up doing kind of work for hire work and bought ourselves a little bit of time. So to be honest, the early days weren't super good. And then our thesis turned out to be absolutely correct, right? So what ended up happening was, of course, Fortnite launched, PUBG launched, Free Fire came out, and a bunch of high-end console games reported in Asia on mobile phones. They started to kill it there, and it became really, really apparent that, oh man, these high-end games really can dominate. And now you've got three essentially battle royale games in the top 15 grossing between PUBG, Free Fire, and Call of Duty. Fortnite's not even in the charts anymore because of the Apple fight. But if that was there, you'd have four basically first-person shooters in the top 15 grossing charts, which shows that these games have audiences, they're willing to pay, they love these products, and they want them on their phones. So when that happened, then it became really easy to raise, to be honest. So it sort of flip-flopped on us. And I think the lesson for me was, and I heard this from other kind of entrepreneur founder types who just said, look, sometimes you got to grit your teeth and you just got to fight through it. You got to just sort of not give up, put one foot in front of the other and keep going. And I think one of the strengths of my team was that we're pretty salty, we're pretty tough, and we just said, yeah, we're not going to give up, we're going to keep going. We know we're right. It's just a matter of time. Okay. Unfortunately, it turned out that we were around to sort of take advantage of the fact that the market came around when it did. And so now, I think not only is that continue to be true, I think it's going to continue to accelerate. I think more and more high-end games are going to show up on phones that are going to be just amazing, beautiful. I don't think that's stopping anytime soon. So yeah, it's a very bright future if you're in mobile.
Yeah, and I'll be honest, like I've seen a game and it could be a PC game. Like it's really nice. All right, so considering or assuming that passion for video games and development skills aren't enough, what skills are paramount for founders of video game companies?
Founders, oh man. I think honestly that the first thing is have a point of view, have a vision, have something that you want to do. And I think, I don't know if I'm quoting Elon Musk here, but all companies are basically a group of people trying to make a product or a service. Okay. So you really have to have a strong opinion on what that product or service is. What is the company there for? It's not just a bunch of people who are like, hey, let's do something cool. But what is it? Because the games industry is so vast, so competitive, that you really have to be sort of laser focused on what your direction is, what your product or service is. Behind that, generally, what makes a good product or service is it solves some problem for customers. It's better than a previous product, right? So in some way, better graphics, better performance, it's cheaper, it's more fun to play, less cost, I don't know, it's got better graphics, more features, something. So I think having a clear view at that is kind of step one. Step two, for better or worse, you got to be able to make money somehow, because you can't build a team if you can't pay them. And so that's where the business component comes in. And it's not super hard. I think it's all pretty straightforward. There's no sort of magic there. It's just really understanding the basics of business. Like I said, when we first started to raise, it wasn't the way we wanted it to. So we ended up doing work for hire work that bootstrapped the company. I was able to hire folks using that money, and which then is the next step. So have a vision, have a direction you want to go. Then be able to get money somehow. You have to figure out, because you can't pay people if you don't have money. Yeah. And talk about the dark side of the industry. You hear all these stories about people doing work and never getting paid. Yeah. You don't want to be one of those people. So you got to pay them. So to pay them, you got to be able to get money somehow. And then the third thing you got to do is you got to hire great folks. So and obviously, it's easy to hire great folks if you have money. But oftentimes early on, you don't have money. And so, you have to give equity, you have to make them part of the team, you have to sort of figure that, how do you get them in early, which is oftentimes why you see a lot of early people joining teams tend to have more equity than people that come in later, because early on, you don't have the money. So you sort of trade equity in exchange for the lack of cash, as it were.
Yes.
So that's generally the things. I don't know if that's helpful, but that's sort of how I think about it.
Well, it's pretty helpful to me because I'm a big fan. I don't know if you ever watched the series on Netflix, or I think it's called Startup.
Oh no!
Yeah, it's pretty gritty, man. It's really gritty, but yeah.
By the way, I'll say one thing. I had a kind of a mentor of mine way back in my early days of my career, who said, only the crazy people start companies, right? Because statistics, the odds are against you.
Absolutely.
And he said, so only the crazy people start companies. He's like, but since they're all crazy people who are starting companies and nobody sane would ever start a company, if somebody's sane starts a company, they're going to do really well because they're
Uh-huh.
going to do better than all the crazy people out there who are starting companies and are insane.
Uh-huh.
And I always sort of took that to heart because I thought to myself, yeah, if you were a totally sane person, starting companies highly risky, it's hard work.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I think Elon Musk does that phrase where he says, starting a company is like chewing glass while you stare into the abyss.
Yeah.
There's truth to that.
Yeah.
So, but I think the kind of the hardworking, sane, good people generally don't start companies. So if you force yourself to start and sort of leap out, take that first step,
Mm-hmm.
you end up doing better than a lot of other folks out there because you're just kind of a non-crazy person, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, I'll be honest. Like one of the things I've learned in this process, even with my company, small as it is, it's hard to make money on your own terms. But your potential for future growth and wealth is far greater by doing things on your own as an entrepreneur than just kind of getting in the rat race and being a part of somebody else's dream. And it's more fulfilling. You'll work hundreds of hours on your own project, and it feels like it's playing. It's not necessarily, it doesn't feel the same, right? It's a different type of work. So I'm all for it. I encourage anybody, start your own company. If you have a dream, go for it, but make sure you do it the right way. Get accountants and make sure you get accountants and things like that. So,
Yeah.
so back to the game here. So with the game being fully playable at this point, you need people to help you to test it. And so describe your ideal to alpha or pre-alpha beta tester.
Oh man, so I guess I mentioned earlier in the talk,
Mm-hmm.
like I started in QA, so that's actually how I got into the business.
Uh-huh.
So I sort of learned a lot from that. I've seen some really amazing, sort of QA houses, testers who are really talented. I think there's lots of different kinds of testing. I think the one thing that I think makes a particularly good tester is somebody who can understand what the team is trying to do. And that's a subtle point, but it's kind of important because a lot of times what ends up happening is people tend to fall into, sort of, I don't know, let's say like you're a QA guy, you're just trying to find bugs, right? You may say, I found, and so finding a lot of bugs or try to having a list of it is important. I'm not saying don't do that. You have to sort of find that, but how you report them and where you put your focus and can be dramatically more or less valuable to the team if you really know where the team is going. So let's say here's a silly example. I'll make it up. Let's say you're making a first-person shooter, and the team is working on a new targeting system, and they're worried about accuracy, right? They're just like, we're trying to get the system done. We have this new we're on a rocket launcher or something, and they're shooting it, and its accuracy isn't great because there's reasons why. And so they asked the QA team, hey guys, can you help us we're doing a general QA build, but we're really trying to focus in on kind of the accuracy part of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Being able to understand kind of what the team's trying to do, understanding how the tech actually works related to that system, and then not skipping other bugs. If you see other bugs, definitely note them, get them down, all that kind of stuff. But if your sort of mind share is 100%, 75% of your mind share should be on targeting. What's happening there, and then maybe 20-30% kind of keep track of all the rest of the stuff that you normally do: bugs, catching bugs, writing them down, regressions, whatever all the rest of the stuff is.
Okay.
And so I think being aligned with the team and understanding as much as you reasonably can how the tech works is really, really powerful for a QA person. It'll be that you'll rise through the ranks faster than you may even ever realize, because if you understand how the tech works, you're going to write really helpful bugs and information to the product people and the engineers, because you're not just going to say like, shot off to the left. You may say, hey, the physics collider didn't detect this other object because it's overlapping by 1 meter, and I turned on the debugging and I took a screenshot of it. Here you can see the physics collider is overlapping.
Okay.
That's way better of a bug written out than like, hey, he didn't hit the guy. It's a bug. It's 6021. It's a no shit, whatever. Yeah. So understanding the tech is really important. You don't have to be an engineer. I mean, a lot of this stuff is user-friendly facing tools, but it does require you to probably do a couple of late nights on your own, learn about the tools, ask the product folks, kind of off hours. Hey, I want to do this sort of extra credit. I want to learn how the system works. Because you were trying to QA something the other day, and you're like, I'm going to spend 8 hours learning a tool. The team's going to be like, dude, we have to test this. Like, can't be off learning how physics works, right? So you want to kind of do those things if you're really trying to learn about the tech and the systems of the game and sort of building up your capability. It's almost like an education. Then apply that education to your daily job, and you'll just kill it. You'll run through the ranks super fast. Because as you go, you'll also start to learn every part of the game as feature after feature is built. You'll learn different system. So by the time the game ships, not only are you going to be like the best QA person in the house, you're going to know all the systems of that product. Now, I'm talking primarily about an internal QA person. Now, that said, let's say you're external and you're a part of a Discord group or something like that. Similar thing kind of applies. You can just ask us, hey, I'd love to play test the game. What tools are you using? What tech are you using? Is there anything specific I can focus on? Is there anything, beyond just playing the game and giving sort of player feedback? And the reason I mention that is because you're going to get a lot of player feedback anyway. Players are going to, they're the unprofessionals, right? I mean, they're not pros. So they're just going to kind of give you player feedback. So you're going to get that anyway. But if you want to get into the industry as a QA person, you want to start to figure out how to help the team ship. Because ultimately that's what that's about. And that's kind of a little bit of a side ramp. Hopefully that's helpful.
That's pretty cool. I didn't even think of that as a path into the industry.
Honestly, it's a great path into the industry. If you don't have any experience and you want to learn, I'll tell you a funny story. At a company that I worked at back in the day called Jamnet, we hired a lawyer, full lawyer. He was like a lawyer out of New York, and he wanted to get into the games industry. He said, I'll come into QA. And we're like, what? You're like a full lawyer. You make like God knows how much money. He's like, I want to get into games. I don't have experience. I'm willing to work for nothing. I want to get in here and just learn.
Yeah.
And he was a sponge and he learned really fast. And you might imagine he got promoted up pretty quickly and he did great. But he came in through QA too. He just said, look, I want to get in. I want to learn. I want to be part of the team. I want to see how this all functions. And it's a really great way in the industry. Just don't get sucked into too much of the bad culture. There's some bad culture there too.
Yeah, good to know. Okay, well, and this is a good segue. So at this point, do you have any openings? And if so, what are you looking for in applicants?
So we don't right now, but hopefully that changes dramatically in the near future. Sorry about my cough, it comes and goes. And the reason why we don't have any openings, at least at the moment, is because we're in this kind of closed alpha beta thing that we're doing kind of behind the scenes. If the product resonates with consumers and it does really well, we'll scale pretty quickly. And you'll see us put out job postings kind of all over the place when we do. I usually post them on our website, so you can check there. When we go a little bit more public, a little bit more open, we'll probably also start to just put in places wherever our Discord channel is. We'll have people come there and say, hey, come check out Discord. And by the way, if you want to join the team, here's the requirements, here's what we would do. But generally, I find that if you follow the team as reasonably closely, they're pretty open about what they're looking for and how they're hiring. For us, we used to be all local. We used to all be based in LA, but after COVID, we're sort of more distributed now. But we do kind of generally want to be kind of US time zones. We hired a couple folks outside of the US time zones, and we found that was really tough. It just the performance wasn't there, and they were at a distance from the team. It just didn't quite work. So I think we want to kind of stay within reasonable time differences, at least for now, until the game is out and players like it and it scales. We don't want to go too wide, if that makes sense.
Gotcha. All right. And so, final question. For those interested in becoming testers, how do they go about applying?
Let's see. Well, right now, we don't have anything open, but what we'd probably do is maybe where we post this, we'll put up our Discord channel. We also put up info at Carbonated. You can always write us at info at Carbonated, which is at our website. And that's generally where we have our job postings. So if you want to check out any of our jobs, learn a little bit about the company, you can go to www.carbonated.com. And I think I have a job section down there that shows open roles, if any. And then in that, there's an email link, which I think is info at Carbonated.
Yeah, we're going to get to, I'm going to let Travis get out because the thing is, once again, he is sick. And so, first of all, thank you for doing the interview. You want anything else to drop on the end of that? I was letting you get your water right quick. You said info at Carbonated and what else?
Oh, info Carbonated, and then we may drop a Discord link in when this rolls out, so folks know where to go to kind of be part of the community and kind of keep track of the company
Okay.
as we go. We also have we're pretty light on social media, at least at this point. We do have a Twitter. I think it's at Carb Games, and I think we typically post the job postings there as well when we ever do job postings.
Okay.
But hopefully, I'll be honest, like we hope folks that listen to this learn something. We're not really looking for anything in return. We love the games industry. We've been doing this for a long time. My team's great, really talented folks who work super hard, and we just hope that people like the product, and we hope people help us make a better industry. It's an awesome industry. It's hard work, but I've been in it my whole life, and I just can't say enough about how great the games industry is. But it is tough, but it's fun.
Absolutely. And it's going to be a treat. So hope that you all will follow them on social media, follow the game, follow the progress, so that when they do are able to show this publicly, that you can be a part of it. And also when they start to take beta testers and also other positions when they're hiring for developers, make sure you follow them. But once again, I learned a lot today. I hope you learned a lot. Don't forget to drop a like on this video if this was helpful. Don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel for more interviews and then more information. I'm doing a lot of information with cybersecurity, walking you through the entire process of becoming a hacker. So please make sure that you subscribe to the channel. And when I live stream, come in and jump in. We'll hack together. So anyway, this is Kendrick with Technology Interpreters. A big thanks to Travis Boatman, CEO of Carbonated Games, for taking the time out and staying there sick and doing this interview. And thank you for watching.
Bye, everyone. Have a good week.
Oh boy.